Hi, Alex.
Hey, or
It,
Dave.
I'm good. I'm good. It's the end of the week.
Yep.
All right, we've got Jeremy here in the window, just making sure because we have a hybrid setup now. Like I don't want to say too much, but the with all the fuss around the podcasts, we're upgrading our setup. But
That's
now
good.
we're kind of half upgrading. There's the new camera, some things on the lights. For some reason we have these chairs,
We're
which
not far from the microphone. That's
microphone
nice.
are old, and so anyway, a lot of things around here, and Jeremy's checking because obviously he doesn't want us to speak for all this time for nothing. All right, so welcome to the podcast. Today we're going to talk about Salesforce, but before we do, can you just do a quick intro about yourself? Quick background.
Yeah. I'm a solutions guy. Let's say I've been a solutions guy all my life, and I started as a chemical engineer. I ended up as a solutions
I did
guy,
not know
software
that.
engineer. Yeah, I started in business processes, supply chain, and then I migrated slowly to technology. I wanted to understand why technology people was like saying no to my request when I was in the business. So I tried to figure it out that way.
And then you joined Lid, helping us, on the sales, the pre-sales engineering process on ERPs, warehouse managements. But you have your role has evolved, and now is more precise, not more precise, I should say, but targeting at a new practice,
Mhm.
which is Salesforce, right?
Yeah. The main idea why Salesforce and was brought to the picture is really to complement our services and supply chain, because when we think of Salesforce is known as a CRM,
Mhm.
but I mean
CRM, a customer
customer
relationship.
relationship management tool, but I mean it's way much more than that. It's when we think of an operation in distribution, manufacturing, uh, you think of all the transactions going on internally, but there's a lot of relations internally and with external environment to make sure that the results will be there.
Yes. So today, the purpose of today's discussion is around how Salesforce can be used not only we're not going to talk about the CRM part, but rather in the context of supply chain, how the software can contribute, support, help supply chain operations. And kind of distinguish it also versus the other softwares that obviously are used to plan and execute on supply chain activities.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah, as we think of how everything starts, let's say, I mean, we have the client in the beginning and the client in the end, the customer in the beginning and the customer in the end. So if you are selling products or services or anything like this, you have to capture that demand. You have this relationship with your client or customer, and you can have like a website, could be e-commerce. You can have someone calling in. You can have multiple ways for these orders to come in, and we call it omni-channel.
Mm-hmm.
So when you receive the orders, then you have people taking orders. Could be salespeople in the field, could be customer service desk or anyone, and then these orders will be processed through the operations down to the delivery in the field, if that's the case, or home delivery to the customer door.
So it's interesting because you're saying from like the customer there is a relationship with the customer throughout every step
Yes.
of the supply chain, or at least I should say the distribution, from the moment they place an order at, let's say, at certain organizations until all the way that it receives its goods. So like how is that, before we talk about that process and the steps, like how does that um, relate to the ERP and the warehouse manager or other, as I said, planning and execution software? Maybe kind of explain where it has a role, or where it's being used, I could say, and then we can fall into like the specificity.
Yes. If we think of, let's say, an ERP system, which is the main mission of an ERP system was to break the silos within an operation, right? So we're talking, I can have the order being, I didn't take the orders, I can have the order being the inventory allocated to the orders properly, and keep the steps for the fulfillment after up to the delivery. So this is all coordinated and also supported by finance in a big loop. So, and you can have other systems like transportation management systems or warehouse management systems complementing the shop floor to the delivery for planning and etc. down to the delivery. Obviously, the ERP takes care also of all the planning for replenishment, for inventory management, and etc. So that is internal to the operation. This is obviously there to serve the customer in the end, to meet the customer requirements, but this is transparent to the customer. The customer doesn't care. He doesn't see that.
Doesn't interact with the customer does not interact with those systems.
But there are interactions internally, because if you think of sales and the operation, in most situations there's still a gap in communication between the two. The operations in all those steps in execution or fulfillment of a given order, they're much more streamlined. Sometimes operations, sales, they are in the field, or they have like these multi-channels to deal with, customer demands and stuff that they cannot promptly respond to without knowing more, or without a very close link to the operations. Meaning, I'm in sales, but if I don't have visibility on inventory, on what's coming, on what's the pipeline, or my capacity or capability to deliver, I cannot close a deal. I cannot close an order. Or if I do, without having that, I can put an order in place that's not gonna be met by my operations soon, and my client's gonna be frustrated. So one of the things that it does internally to an operation is to bring sales and operations much closer, interacting internally within a company, so they can have that interaction that's necessary. One example, I work with a company, and they were saying one of the things, when I have a call and I want to close a deal, price is important, but even more important for us is my ability to, on the fly, tell the client, yes, I can deliver that to that date. And without this bridge or this link, they don't have that visibility. They have to call the operations to figure out, and they don't have the ability to promise the date to the client.
So a system like Salesforce allows to provide the visibility to the person who's directly interacting with the customer to make promises that, in theory, they'll be able to fulfill.
Yes, I would say not only the promise to say in terms of capability or availability, but also when I'm closing an order, I want to make sure I'm profitable, for example. If I'm being under pressure, if I have inventory to offload, if this is being profitable or no, as I'm saying, if I can have information, again, this information is coming from the ERP, if I have that information on the fly as I place the order, it's going to help me see if I can upsell, if I can give another promotion or got another discount or anything, and close the deal and have more revenue.
And stay within the boundaries of the objective. But that's interesting. It's not about can or cannot, but also being able to gauge the you say the profitability of doing X or Z. Okay, so is it worth to go to the next? Because I like how you broke down. You say, well, the during that life cycle or the interaction with a customer, well, you want to talk about the three main areas where Salesforce will play a role in that operation, which is at the beginning, at order entry, somewhere in the middle, at order allocation, and towards the end when it's time to deliver.
Yeah, amazing. Because the first portion, I mean, if you think of order entry, is pretty much aligned with what we're just talking about here, is not only someone in customer service having visibility or taking calls or interacting with the customer, is also an alignment with these different sources. When I have a call and I check, for example, inventory in front of me, or anything for me to help me close this deal, if I have at the same time orders coming from a website, competing with the same inventory I'm seeing, I may promise something that's not good enough, that's not, realistic. So one of the things Salesforce does at the order entry level, not only linking or bringing all that information from supply chain and vice versa to facilitate what I need to do for me to do my job in sales, let's say, in an efficient way and profitable way. Because we want to meet customer requirements or demands, but we want to make sure we are profitable. So in that sense, it also looks to the outside, to these other sources of orders, and orchestrate all of this for this visibility or these steps to be aligned.
So does that mean it's near real time or almost real time information? As you say,
Yes.
when there's when two salespeople are potentially competing to sell inventory to a customer, you actually need, it has to be real time.
Yes, these different channels are competing, as you say,
Yeah.
and these different channels are under the same platform. So
Yeah.
Salesforce has marketplace. Okay, so you can have your website, you can have your B2B or B2C portals in there, all connected to this platform, the same platform that's going to be linked to your supply chain. So everybody's looking at the same thing. Okay.
Just because I'm thinking about a certain operation, call it in the meat supply chain, food, but specifically around protein, let's say, and in that industry, you could a lot of the sales are done over the phone as well. So someone who's talking on the phone with a customer will basically have access to the platform.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they're gonna have, and if they have like colleagues covering pretty much the same region, they'll be like, reaching out or picking up things from the same inventory. They're gonna be seeing as it goes real time. So it's all in the same platform. So that's the benefit. And so as we go from there, this person in this role, once he's gonna or she's gonna be promising date to something. Sometimes what happens is, this happens in sales, this kind of order allocation or inventory allocation to the order, but it's informal. So it's communicated like in a broken way to the ERP. So by the time that is communicated and arrives to the ERP for fulfillment, it's already being allocated somewhere else. So this bridge, what it does is the salespeople, they can see the inventory, they can see what's coming in the pipeline, they can see if they are on back order, and they can trigger already soft allocation of inventory that's going to be passed on to the ERP, confirmed, and they can place a PL that's going to, I have a demand here associated to this order, so commit. So when the ERP receives that for fulfillment, which is the next step, it's all streamlined, it's all aligned, it's all already confirmed. It's not like someone just called, I got an email, or it's not broken in that process.
So the workflow ties every piece.
It's fluid.
Yep. Yep.
So that is important, because it makes sure that when you get to, you're gonna respect, because customers, it's all about customer experience with your company. Customers are happy not only if your product is good or the price is good, but companies expect more and more today, or people, customers expect more and more today to have great product, great, fast delivery, and etc. So when they're placing an order and you confirm an order, you cannot just go in there and say, oh, oops, it's a mistake. I mean, I live that as a customer, and it's really frustrating to have someone saying, oh, by the way, you placed an order here, but it's on back order. It happens because of that.
Because of the disconnect among the different nodes. Okay. So then, well, let's say inventory, no mistake, the inventory has been allocated to a customer. What happens next, or how does Salesforce support it?
So the next component is the component around order fulfillment and orchestration. So if you have all these orders, so there's this pre-confirmations done, but then I have to further dispatch and orchestrate this to different warehouses and support that. There is this order management capability within Salesforce that is basically other management system, but this is within Salesforce that does exactly this. It's gonna have much more room for business rules that will be complex to send signals to, for example, WMS systems in the floor to how to properly execute those orders based on priorities or anything that may be relevant for the business. Because more and more there will be complexity to deal with, one rule on top of the other. And in most systems, it can become pretty custom or cumbersome to manage. But within Salesforce, can be really user friendly.
You're saying rather than try and, I shouldn't say bastardize your ERP, but try to make compromises within the set of functions or tools that exist to apply some business logic. Salesforce has been designed in order to give you a lot of flexibility. Is that the way to
if
think
we can
about it?
compare that, if you think of two squares, one square, the ERP, it's black square where is the core of the system that you shouldn't touch.
Mhm.
If you touch it, you're gonna break it. And there's a leeway around it where you can change, customize, and flexibilize the system. Let's say within Salesforce, that black box is much smaller.
Mhm.
It's like a box of Legos that you can, as you put the Legos are the objects, as you put them together, they're going to be consistent, they're going to work fine. You don't break the system. So you have more leeway in
Okay.
those business rules. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And then on the so you talk about managing that order, and then on the delivery side, how does what comes into play?
Yeah, because if you think of the steps for delivery, I mean, if let's say I have the orders that they're picking lists and the floor, and they start doing that based on, they're obviously gonna be sequencing that to make sure the loading in the truck is based on the stops that you're gonna make and the routes that you're gonna be delivering and everything. This can be well managed by WMS and TMS system internally, okay? But what Salesforce does is, by the time the truck is out the door and up to the point that the customer receives that, it could be like B2C example, but could be an example of distributing food service distribution, for example,
Yeah.
where it's critical to receive at a given time for continuity of the operation, restaurants or hospitals or anything like this. So in an example like that, it's this last mile delivery is as important, if not more important, than any other steps that you worked on to prepare that delivery.
Mhm.
Meaning that when the truck is out of the door, you have the routes. Salesforce can plan those routes, can optimize the routes, meaning okay, I have a route established here, but then there's traffic, then there's an accident, or someone calls in, I have to add something to that delivery, another stop, and optimize the route. Make sure that this is going to happen in the day
But
by
wait,
the time they need it.
Salesforce is not trying to replace a route optimizer or.
No, Salesforce in the field, I mean, it's again in the same spirit that this is a relational part of your supply chain
Mhm.
as well. So
Mhm.
all this, if I'm customer service here and I get a call, I know exactly where my driver is, how many minutes they are from your house, or if the truck is okay, anything that the customer is asking, I'll have the visibility as well.
Yeah. Okay, but just
And
so,
even the
so I
driver-
understand. So,
Yeah.
so on the Salesforce part again is to inform customer service, for instance, to provide accurate data to the customer service that then can inform the customer.
Mhm.
But Salesforce in that case would feed off potentially, not potentially, if there's a route optimizer or a transportation management tool that's in place for delivery when there's multiple stops on the route, the optimization is not within Salesforce.
Yes,
Really?
it is. We can in there you can plan the route, you can the stops, you can schedule, you can dispatch, and on the fly you can optimize it. I
Okay.
mean, and it's much less cumbersome. And again, because most optimizers, let's say, are niche solutions satellite to the other solutions.
Yeah.
Right? This solution is linked, is the same platform as you're gonna have many other components, so it's the
Mhm.
same backbone. So
Yes.
you don't need to, it's not something satellite just for that. So because in this delivery steps, as the driver can interact with the client can be receiving messages, they can take a proof of receipt, they can take a signature. If it's a technician, because some other companies do actually service, not
Yeah.
only products, you can have your technicians actually accessing the tool, being dispatched, assigned, based on their capacity, but based on their capability. Oh, this technician can do this job, this technician cannot do that job.
Yeah.
So you do that in dispatch, and in the field, You can have people executing, collecting hours, payments, and everything, closing the work order or delivery order, and closing the loop back to the ERP system.
Very interesting, and yeah, because we have numerous clients we work with that has, let's say, field technicians. Either they have to go and repair something, and so that
Installation
has
or anything like
install exactly, and that has been quite appealing to them.
Yes.
All right. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think it's just much more important. Really, is really to demystify this transactional versus the relational, because these components, yes, you're finalizing the transaction, but they have components relationship with your client across the board. So that's why that Salesforce was as known as CRM, because it's really focused on the relational part of this business components.
Well, Alex, thank you very much. That was insightful.
Welcome.
I appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Take care.